Hello and welcome to Until We Arise, where we bridge a divided people to loving community, empowering resources, and a compassionate Christ.
Our vision is to build a thriving global community of women who combat injustice and oppression with love and compassion.
My name is Rachel, and I'm the founder and CEO of Until We Arise.
And I am Beto. I am the co-founder and CFO of Until We Arise.
And welcome to our Valentine's Day special. Woo!
Woo! So exciting.
So today we're going to be having our, it's Valentine's Day, but it's kind of like our Galentine's Day. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
excited about it. So we have a very special guest today. So do you want
Yes,
to
we
tell us a little
do.
about this girl? Because I'm honored to have her here. Go ahead and you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about, because you introduced me to her.
Yes. So she is a very dear friend of mine. Just has been impactful in my life. But I will say that we probably did not start off that way at the beginning, at least not for me. So I met her going to a Bible study in my mid-20s, which feels like so far to say that, but in my mid-20s. And we had conversations in groups and stuff, but I remember I hadn't been going to Bible study for, it probably was a couple weeks. And I went to church. And I get to church and I don't remember if it was before service or after service, but I walked back into the sanctuary and she sees me and she just yells, "Amiga, how are you? I miss you."
Totally
And I
normal
remember,
thing. Totally normal thing.
I mean, for her, apparently, but I remember thinking, is she talking to me? Like, I kind of like looked around and didn't see anybody else and realized, oh, she's talking to me. And I remember the thought that came to my mind was, I didn't realize we were this close. But, and I always say this to her and to other people, but she definitely, and I'll say it because it's very characteristic of Evelyn. She hugged her way into my life. She came and gave me this huge hug, and she just like has hugged her way into my life. And now I don't know what else my life would be like if she wasn't in it.
And
But yes, so I introduced her to you.
yeah, you did. And I remember it was always like I've heard about her. I would see her at church, we would say hello. Sometimes we'd catch coffee afterwards. But I remember it was like, first of all, she drives slow. And we were I remember because we were moving from LA to Long Beach, I think, or one of the
Uh-huh.
moves that we did. And I realized like this girl is not like other girls. Like, first of all, I was like, she's really following all the laws. And I was annoyed because I'm an LA driver. Uh, but then I was like, we were in the car at one point and she was like so committed to country music. And if you know me, it is not my jam. It
Mm-hmm.
is not my jam. And I'm like, this girl is really like, you're going to love it. And I'm like, no, like there's not, I'm already in my like mid 30s. I'm like, I know what I like and what I don't. But I think that's something like she didn't hug her way into my life, but she was stern. And she was like, she will challenge you. And I realized that I'm used to being that person that's like, no, 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 you have to try this. Try this. You'll love it. Go for it. And she's like that person. And so when it came back
Yeah.
at me, it was like, excuse me, like, did you pray about that? And I'm like, hold up. I pray all the time. Why are you out of my business? So I am so happy because she's like just one of a kind friend.
She
And
is,
so
for sure.
over the years, I mean, especially in the recent year, I've just been so honored to get close to her. So I'm glad she's here and agreed to join us on our podcast. So why don't you do the
Yeah.
honors?
Yeah, I'm totally excited. And so, yes, so we're excited that she is here. She is a Kingdom Ambassador. She's an International Friendship Council Facilitator. She's a lover of nations. She's an artist, a daughter, a sister, and friend. And she would also probably call herself a K-drama aficionado. Um, so, without further ado, just want to welcome Evelyn Reyes to our podcast today.
Welcome,
Welcome,
Evelyn.
friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just like to say we were that close, Vero. You just didn't know. You didn't know it. We went camping. You don't get closer than that, okay?
Camping? Oh, we had. Haven't I don't remember. We went like a couple
That was when the whole
with
group
our
went
group, but
did like a camping thing, and I was like, we're like this now. You didn't know.
Currently.
okay.
Apparently so. I thought it was worth
Rachel, of course I drive following the law. We're supposed to do things, all things as if unto the Lord, driving included.
I don't know. I've been freed
like
from the
this.
law.
Like this.
I drive with grace. I'm under the new covenant in my driving. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm under a better covenant.
New promises.
New
New
promises.
promises. No tickets.
Oh my goodness.
Okay,
Yes.
we're gonna have some serious conversations
I
here.
know.
No, but really, Evelyn, it's so good to have you. Like,
Thank
you
you.
are just awesome. So I can't think of a better guest for our Galentine's Day. How do you usually celebrate Valentine's?
I typically forget that it's happening until someone reaches out and it's like, hey, you wanna like do like a dinner, like a Galentine's thing? And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, we should do that. That's happening. Great. Yes.
And Vero, this is your first Valentine's Day married. How are you? What are you guys
Yes.
planning?
We haven't talked about it. So yesterday our church had, or yesterday as in Sunday, our church had a romantic Valentine's Day dinner. So we went to that and it was like get dressed up. And so that was a lot of fun. But he started work this week. So as he started work this week, and so he'll be coming home from work. So I feel like it's kind of on me to do something. So I'm not sure yet. I think I was thinking maybe like a little indoor picnic because it's been raining, so it'll be wet outside. And I'm cheesy, so I'm thinking of like going to get some pho and then writing a little Valentine's Day card that says like "I'm crazy for you" or something like that.
I love puns. That's so
Something like that. So
I love it.
That's what we'll be doing.
Oh, that's adorable. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, and it's funny because, well, I've been single like forever. But I won't be single forever, but I have been. And so actually, being that we're talking about friendship, before we jump into our interview questions, I remember one year I tried to throw in a Valentine's Day party and it was a flop. Do you remember that, friend?
It was you, me, and my sister showed up like towards the end or something like that. I have pictures.
It's embarrassing, actually. It was fun, but I was like, I'm gonna invite people. I have a house. It's gonna be like just fun. Anybody can come, and anybody did come. Vero. And I think that's how our friendship was established. Every time I did something, I don't know why Vero always showed up. She was always there, and I just love it. Like, friendships have different ways of being built, whether it's sharpening, whether it's challenging, whether it's like planting a hug on somebody, being there in their hardest times, or just having a blast together, but real friendships last through all those seasons. And I'm saying there are friendships that last only for particular seasons. I get that. But like, I appreciate the people who let me be me. And I know both of you girls have given that space for me. So I just honor you both in that. And it's a different kind of love that I have really grown to understand at this age in my life. The world is really consumed with just the importance of romantic love and sexualized love and that kind of affection. And for me, man, like, love is such a rich, rich, rich idea. Not only are we talking the love of God, but friendships, and he's given us this capacity to have these bonds that are truly unique, and special. And I think that's why I started this like series, like wanting to talk and unravel love. And so, Evelyn, you show love. I'll say one more thing about you before I ask you the first question. When Vero was when she first went to Mexico, and I think that she must have known that I was going to be sad or something. I don't know how. It was 2020, I want to say. It was the pandemic. And she just showed up at my house with presents. And I cried because I was like kind of like that amiga. Like, are we this close? Like, she drove and she was, like, lost and nervous to drive to LA. Driving again. Um, but she showed up with, like, curly hair products and, like, this cool little, like, hair cloth thing. It was cool and just so sweet, and it was in the middle of the pandemic, and we sat on the porch and talked, and man, girl, you're special.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm excited to learn. Man, like, well, let's jump into our questions.
Yeah.
Because to me, those are the signs of love. People who are there for you, who go outside of their way, people who show up. And so, what is love to you, Evelyn?
Well, I was thinking about this question, and I think the automatic response and like the first surface answer is Jesus, like right off the bat. To me, like that's like the perfect definition of love, like complete embodiment of love, because he came from a place of perfection, a place of like safety, a place of honor and righteousness and holiness, to a place that was like a hot mess, like in every way. And he came to a people that like ultimately he would never know would ever come to love him back. And so like to me, that's like the ultimate definition of love. It's self-sacrifice, it's submission, it's willingness to lay down your life for others. But then that directly correlates to the Father, because, you know, God the Father is ultimately who sent Jesus, right? And so it all began because he wanted to reconcile humanity to him. And like nothing speaks louder than like the Father's heart for his children.
Wow.
And so like that to me like has been like tremendous in my walk with God, especially like coming from a broken home, and when I didn't have like a father figure. That was like major. That was one of the first characteristics of the Lord, that he revealed himself to me to begin to establish a place of trust, so that I could have healthy friendships and relationships all around. And then, of course, can't do without the Holy Spirit, because that's like the guarantee of what is yet to come. And I mean, if you think of a friend and you think of like the Holy Spirit, like he's a guide, he's a teacher. And I think that genuine friends will always be a guide and will always be willing to teach you whatever you don't know. And a guide sometimes means, you know, sometimes it means just being a listener, which I've had to learn, because I tend to I'm a problem solver by nature. So many times I want to give like the solution, but sometimes people just want like someone to hear them. And so I've learned to kind of not be so quick to be like, well, you could do A, B, and C, you know, and try to explore a solution, but try to really have an understanding of what is it that this person needs in this moment. And maybe it doesn't mean like I'm still not proactive in the background to intercede for that person in prayer. But maybe they just are not in a position to hear an answer quite yet. And that's okay, because we all have those moments, I think. So, but ultimately, like, correction is a big one for me in my friendships.
Yeah.
I expect the people I love to correct me. I do. And as painful and uncomfortable as it is, I need that, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, that's what I try to give, of course, always in love, because there was a time when I felt like I approached correction more from a place of just trying to be right, trying to prove myself. And many times, I mean, people are tender, you know, like even in like the worst of the worst, it's hard to hear those hard truths. And so, like, you know, even people that have been walking with the Lord for a long time, even though they know what it is, like there's still got to be a tender approach. But sometimes you do need that straight truth to get you to a place of like, no, like this is what it is, you know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I wanted to just bring back before I go into that, because I feel like in the dynamic here with all three of us, we've all experienced some of that, and what you just described. But one thing you said about the Lord as our Father, you know, being the definition of love, I think that was it's interesting because we hear often, like, you know, He's the father to the fatherless, but even those of us who have fathers, you know, like I remember going on a motorcycle ride with my dad. Like, I'm blessed, you know, I know that I received that, and I'm grateful for that. But I went on a motorcycle ride with my dad, and then maybe I value these moments and I cherish them because I was so almost lost him, you know, so quite a few times. But I remember in a moment I was on the back of the motorcycle driving down to Orange County, and it was scary. We're going fast on PCH, you know, and I realized in that moment my dad would do anything for me. Like, he would die before he let me die. Like, when he had a liver transplant, like, he refused to even let me get tested. He said, "I won't take your liver. Like, I don't want you scarred, my brother or myself." And when I think about that, it was beautiful because I had this moment and I was like, I love my dad. But there was also this humanity in him that was like, I love him, but he's limited. And I think about our Father. It made me think about our Father in heaven that loves with that same capacity, but is like not limited by the humanity that our human parents are, you know? So that really just hit me. So I just wanted to share that. But
I love that.
yeah. Also, though, I think that sensitivity to tell hard truths to each other. All of us have had some pretty hard conversations, and I think, like, in some of these correcting conversations, like the foundation is love, and that helps, right? Like, it's not like, even if sometimes it's like, I want to be right, when we get past that and when we're no longer moving in that, it's powerful. I know one of the things that Vero and I were working on together was like our bounce back, you know, like, because I sometimes will say things and I'm like, oh, that was a little intense. Friend, I was really mean. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, you need to forgive me. And she's like, I need a minute. Like, and I'm like, no, but I recognize the wrong. I'm wrong. Hurry up and fix it. Like, and like, just our our bounce back time on different things, like, were different. And I was like, I messed up fast. I want you to forgive me fast. And she was like, yeah, I forgive you, but just give me like a date. Yeah.
There's been progress.
On both sides, right?
Yeah. But I want to touch on that because I think it's I don't think many of us would correlate correction with love. Like, many of us want to just be pacified, and we think, I'll say for me, I won't like speak generally. I'll say for me, like, being corrected has been something that I've grown to be comfortable with, especially with my friends and those that are really close to me, because I feel like I'm really hard on myself. And I will probably be the first one to notice like my faults. I'll be the first to notice if I did something wrong. Now, like, the Lord's been working on my humility to be quick to forgive or ask for forgiveness, right? But
in marriage or what?
And I think it's been like progressively, actually. And so I love this conversation of friendship because, and even how I'm gonna like detour a little bit, but even as Evelyn talked about like her love for God or her that love with God as the Father being the foundation to even have good friendships. And I think like having good friendships then is like a good foundation to have like a romantic relationship. And I think the Lord has been showing me that. But So yes, also in marriage, the Lord has been working in me. But because it is it goes from like, obviously with the Lord, it's a very intimate relationship. And then with friendships, it's intimate as well. But then with a partner, it's like a different intimacy. And so for me, it's like these places where you're very vulnerable with people, especially like really close friendships with the Lord. If you're having that like healthy relationship with God, then you don't hold things back from God. And the same thing with your partner. Well, we're all women here, so your husband, right? And so as you're open and vulnerable, correction can sometimes feel like an attack. Because if it's not done in love, if it's not done in a way that you're guarding each other, or you're guarding this person in this area that might be weak, then it can come off as an attack. And so I think for me, I've had to learn to correlate that correction is love, that I love you, so I don't want you to keep walking in this area. Like just yesterday, Val made a sauce, and he asked me, oh no, he made a sauce, but after that he was eating the guacamole we had in the fridge. He's like, I think the guacamole was going bad, and he asked me to try it. And so I was like, okay. And I dipped my finger in it, but I was washing dishes, so my hands were like clean. They had soap on them, water, so it wasn't like I was like petting canela and then I dipped my finger, but I dipped my finger and I licked it. And he looked at me and he was like, are you okay with just dipping your fingers into jars? And the way he asked me rubbed me in such a wrong way that I immediately shut down. And so if I know Rachel has definitely experienced my shutting down when I'm upset. I don't know if Evelyn, if you have, but I'm sure you probably have. I just maybe haven't done it as often.
I think maybe like via text.
Oh,
it's okay.
I'm a work in progress.
This is not, do not disturb.
And we're not responding anymore.
I'm not calling.
No hearts.
But and so I immediately responded, and it took me a second, and thankfully like the Lord has worked on my bounce back with Rachel. There's a lot of work that the Lord did, and so it's helped in our friendship, but it's also helped in my relationship with my husband. And so there was like a moment of the Lord like, Beto, that wasn't okay, but also me needing to process like, why did that upset me so much? Why was I so annoyed by the way he asked me this? Anyway, so we talked it through, but realizing, and I told him because right after that, I went to go make myself like something to eat, and I went to grab the sauce that he made, and I was literally putting my finger in the jar again, and I stopped myself, and I realized, oh, I guess I am okay with putting my finger in jars. It's that like I was already processing. I hadn't asked for forgiveness yet. I was already processing, and I realized that's probably not okay to do, Beto. But I didn't realize, because I lived by myself for so long. I don't share my jars with other people. And so I had to like talk to him, and I was like, yeah, I appreciate like the way you said it wasn't a way that I think I can receive it. And so we talked about that, but I did say, I realized that's probably not a thing that I should be doing. And I recognize that is helping me not do that. And it helps because, I mean, I don't know if I ever did jars that I shared with you guys. So if I did, I'm sorry. You have to
Get your fingers out my jar, Beto. Get your fingers out my jars. I do have okay, I'm sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, but like it does show that if the word says, him who the Father loves corrects. And so it is a characteristic of love.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question in that same vein for you, Evelyn. I think it's so admirable to be a person who says, I want my friends to correct me, because I'm not that girl. I am very hard on myself and Vero knows, like, I will talk myself into a circle and need somebody just to shut up and let me talk myself into a circle. And that's why I think we're friends, because you let me do that. I'm like, don't tell me that I'm wrong, because because I struggle with anxiety I have in the past, and depression. Like, I have already like looked at 17 different angles, and I feel this big. And so if somebody then brings correction, sometimes in the past, especially, but I've been working on it, it tears me up. It makes me feel even smaller. How did you get comfortable with that? How did you do that? How did you find yourself comfortable with saying, hey, yeah, Correct me, friend.
I think it's because I do relate to that. Like, I am the kind of person that has struggled with condemnation, because I am very self-analytical in that same way that you both are. Um, I can identify my mistakes, but many times I bury them underneath, like, oh no, it's not that big a deal. Like, they're fine. They're fine. They still love me. They have to, like. Um, but I think it's like as I started to like grow in my relationship with the Lord, and He started to bring conviction of things. Initially, I would default to be feeling condemned and then like wanting to be away from Him because now I'm ashamed. And so I think it's like God began to show me like correction's not a bad thing. Like it's a great thing. It means that you have potential to be so much more and to be so much better. And I see that and I know that about you. Therefore, I don't want these things to hold you back or hold you down. And so as I began to learn to receive from the Lord, and then people, like the people around me would sometimes, I think it's the Lord will always, of course, use the people closest to you because those are the people that can identify those things in you. And many times I know that the things that annoy me about other people are the things that I see I want to change in a sense about other people are many times the things that I need to change in myself.
Yeah.
And that's how I can identify them because I know that, oh, like that's a struggle here too. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So like, I think it's come from a place of like, I didn't just create you to correct others. Like it's a two-way, it has to be a two-way street. As iron sharpens iron, like it's a two-way street. So a friend sharpens a friend. It has to be,
How do you oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
How do you define, like, I think sometimes when you build intimacy with people who don't really have the right, you try to bring correction. How do you
Yeah.
process that? Because that's hard. Like
Mhm.
people who, I mean, sometimes I'm like, okay. But sometimes I'm like, it throws me when people want to, like, because there's some people with some audacity out here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why do you think it's okay for you to tell me that? Like, it's kind of like the traditional tia, that tia, like I was watching some show and like the tias come in and she's like, oh, it looks like you've been eating a lot of tamales. And it's like, excuse me. Yes, I need to lose weight, but you don't have to point it out. Oh, so you're still not married. You must never want to get married. I'm like, whoa, Tia, bring it all the way down. But it's one thing for like the tias and the abuelas and all the people.
Yeah.
But some people, especially when you're a leader or, just as a friend or whatever, that's the maturity as a mature believer. People got the audacity. How do you process that?
I mean, there's like two angles to that. I think one in the beginning, especially when I was like getting really rooted in my walk with the Lord. I'll use the example. Sometimes friends from work who are not believers would sometimes say things to me like, "Oh, that was really harsh," or like, like different things. And I would totally just like bypass that because I was like, you're not a believer. Like, you don't know the standards of living under which I operate. Therefore, you have no wisdom to offer.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I was like,
I told y'all she's crazy.
like, you don't know me. Get out of my face. And I was. And then like, one day I think I was in worship with the Lord, and the Lord was like, kept bringing like conversations up that I had. And I was like, why do these conversations keep coming up? And like, why is this heavy? Like, why is it bothering me? And I was like, oh, like, Lord, I wasn't mean to them. I never said like, oh, your advice means nothing. But like, He was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I can still bring correction through anyone. Like, this is not just contingent upon like, the body of the church. Like, there is wisdom to be had from other places, and you need to have a posture to receive it. And then I heard Pastor Jerry, our pastor, once say, that he wanted to have a posture so humble that he could receive correction even from like a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And that was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. And so I've even had the opportunity to share that with my friends who are non-believers. I've told them, like, I think in the beginning I was really dismissive of a lot of the things you guys would say because I felt like you guys didn't understand um like my moral compass, so to speak. And so therefore I didn't feel like you had much to offer. Many times I have found that the things you have said have brought a greater level of understanding and correction than sometimes even some of my friends who are believers.
That's
And
good.
I think that, like, whether you know it or not, I believe that God has been using you to help me grow.
That's
And
so good. I know you have more to say, but that's so good because we're even talking into like how sometimes our church friends that
Mhm.
get overly churchy about it. And
Yeah.
everything's Christianese and it's like we miss stuff because we get so caught
Mhm.
up in the religion of it all that we were blinded sometimes to these other things. And I think that's some wisdom right there, Evelyn. That's
Oh,
good.
thank you. Thank you. And I think that other thing I was gonna say, um, your question was, how did I get to a posture to receive correction, right?
Mhm.
I think also like, man, it's never easy, like, to receive correction no matter what. But I think even when someone says it in a way that was like, well, you didn't have to say it like that, like that, like, because we all have different ways of receiving things. Like, I've learned, even if in the moment I'm offended, to me, like, that's a direct indicator. Like, I got to bring that to the Lord. Like,
Mhm.
there's a reason why I
It rubbed
feel
you. Yeah.
like an automatic,
Yeah.
like, take a step back from me right now. Like, there's a reason behind that. And so I've learned to bring it back before the Lord any which way that it was said. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, Lord, is there any truth in this? Is there anything in me that needs to change? Regardless of how it was said or when it was said, or the fact that it brought an element of offense, and then also taking care of that element of offense right then and there towards that person.
How do
And
you how do you define I wanna go into the next question.
yes,
But I think some of the words that we use are like condemnation and
yes.
versus like and this is fine. I don't want you to redefine all of them, but when you said, offense,
Mhm.
we're kind of speaking from it from a very, we're under the same some of the same teaching when it comes to offense.
Yes.
So, how do you identify offense as you feel it? What do you mean when you're saying that?
I think there's an automatic rejection, like an
Mhm.
automatic rejection, not necessarily even of what was said, but of the individual. Sometimes it is like an element of like, I can't believe they said that in front of all these people, or I can't believe they, yelled it like that, or what does this person know? Like, like, I know the A, B, and C about them, so how dare they? Like,
Ah.
um,
Another one is how could they think that about me? Like,
yeah.
who excuse me.
Yeah,
What made them think
many times it's like,
Um,
"Oh, they don't know me like that, so
Mm,
whatever." They're like, they have no idea who I am. So, yeah, you could think that, whatever, but it's like,
mm,
again, like an automatic dismissal of the person, the idea, or just even the way it was conveyed. I think is, and for me, are clear indicators that, like, and sometimes it's hard because you don't recognize it in the moment. You're just so caught off guard. Like, it's just like kind of hits you and you're just like, whoa, what just happened? But I've
mm,
learned to recognize it, like, later on, maybe throughout my day, I'll just feel like unsettled. Like, something just feels icky inside. Like, I'm just like, ugh, why am I like in a mood? Why am I in a,
mm,
like, oh, I'm just in a bad mood. No one gets in a bad mood for no reason. Cause as human beings, we're like like mirrors of each other,
mhm,
And so if I recognize, like, I'm, in a bad mood for some reason, like there's usually like something behind it that I need to ask, God to reveal to me, because we don't always recognize it right off the bat. It's like, oh, it was that
And
comment.
I think it's important to be sensitive, right? Because
Right.
sometimes there is that offense that jumps up because there's something we need to evaluate and lean into. And
Yes.
sometimes it is just attacks because somebody else is offended and they're sitting in
Right.
it. And so it's an interesting balance of saying, okay, is it me? Or but I think it doesn't but us going before the Lord, the way you described, is the go-to how to solve it, right? If
Mhm.
I'm feeling like, oh man, that hurt my feelings and
Mhm.
I'm offended by that. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, I'll take it to a friend of like one of you guys and say, I don't know, like I said all this, and I talk to the Lord, and I'm like, I cried to the Lord, I couldn't figure it out. I'm all metal, Evelyn. I don't know if it was me or if it was this other person or this guy at the light. He flicked me off, and I don't know. I don't know,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
But it's talking to someone, but also taking it before the Lord, allowing that evaluation to happen in
Mhm.
our hearts, because oftentimes we'll be very either dismissive
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
overbearing and like letting everything take us down,
Yes.
And I think that the key is to go before the Lord in that. And so in that way, friend, like you seem to have this whole friendship thing on lock. Like I know you're not perfect. I know you're not, but you're pretty darn good. You have been a great friend. And so when you talk about love being the Lord, love being Jesus, right? Love being God, love being the Holy Spirit. I think
Yes.
that's beautiful. It's a different definition than other guests have shared. So it's beautiful to just uncover these layers. But have you had a time in your life where either that or even your idea of correction and in friendship, that idea of love has been challenged? Have you ever felt that, like a time in your life where you're like, I got this, but for some reason, like I, I'm I'm facing something challenging here, and I don't know if this
Mhm.
definition is going to hold up like I thought it would.
Definitely. Definitely. I think that's like I mean, it's a constant thing. I think regardless of where you are, because we're always growing and arriving at a different level of relationship with people. But I'll share my most recent and probably like the biggest one that's still in progress, I guess you could say, in my life. Um, yeah, one of my closest friends, actually, my best friend who I've been friends with since I was like 11 years old, has been going through a very like difficult, beyond difficult, I'd say, tremendous health condition right now. And in my walk with her, um, like I'm very protective by nature, almost to the point of being a little possessive, I'll admit. When it comes to my friends, I'm like mine, like
Mhm.
I am. I tend to be like, it's just very much in my nature to be like protective. And so with her, as she began her journey, like my automatic response is like, well, I'm gonna cover her in prayer. Like, let's pray. Like, let's do this, And I'm automatically creating a checklist because again, I'm a problem solver. And so I'm creating a checklist of all the things that we can do together. Like, how can I partner with you? Like, that's one of the biggest things I think when it comes to friendship. That's like a key component of who I am. I'm like, let me take out my sword and shield. It's okay, friend. I got you. Like I'm like, we're going to battle. It's okay. Like we're doing it. Um, and so like and so I'm like gearing up, like trying to get these things like in place. And so I'm like, okay, like, are you doing this like health wise? Are you like juicing? Are you like what vitamins? Like what's going on? Like, should I send you some like turmeric tea? Like, what are we talking about here? And so like all the
And
things.
and just to be clear, just as you're explaining, it's a terminal, like according to the what is the doctors are saying as of right now, it's terminal. So this is why you're like, let's
Yeah.
find these things, right? Okay.
Right. And so like in the beginning, it was like, oh, it's just a process. And so we went through that process like 2 cycles over. The second cycle around, they're like, "Oh, you know, she's good. She's fine." And so we finished that cycle thinking like victory, praise God, you did it, and so like less than 2 months in, it just like, man, completely like shattered, you know, like in the best way I can describe it. It just things started escalating, and it seemed like things were just going from like bad to worse. Um, and that's been like so hard because I think like to see your friend like to have a memory of them like healthy and laughing and loving life. It's like the best. And then to see them all of a sudden in a place of like just like deep physical pain and just worn, like really worn in the sense of like not just physically but like emotionally, and you can tell mentally it's just taking a toll. It's hard. It's hard because like again my instinct is to fight for that person, but if you don't have like a physical something to fight against, that makes it harder. you know
Mm.
and like the word does say we don't fight anyway against flesh and blood. So
Mm.
um so my instincts are to still be like, well, um it doesn't matter what they've said. Like I'm still in this battle. Like it's okay. You need to take a breath, but like we're doing this.
So when you say they, you mean the doctors, or who do you mean by they?
Yes, yes. Like the physicians, like, who nurses, even I think sometimes maybe family members, even with like the best of intentions, whoever. It just for me, like I'm like, no, like that's unacceptable. We never give up, never surrender. And so
Yeah.
like, but at the end of the day, like I've I've come to a place, and I've told this friend as many times as I've told other friends, like, I will support you, whatever your decision is. Like, I will support you, but this is where I stand with you and for you, you know? And so with my friend, I told her that, she had to make a decision at one point when they said, like, there's nothing else that can be done. She had to make a decision about what she wanted to do. And she did. She made the choice that from the beginning she told me, if there comes to a place where, I'm gonna like the circumstances are I'm gonna be just stuck in a hospital or whatever, um, and they just don't know what the outcome will be. She said, I'm gonna choose to spend time with family. I'm gonna choose to really like relish on having that time with the closest people in my life, and that was hard to hear because I wanted to be like, okay, but like we're still doing the checklist, right? Like we're still doing the things,
We're
right?
still fighting. We're still fighting, right?
I still got my gear on. What do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
Um, and so when she said that, I was like, just listening, and I again, because I'm very like, I've learned to be slow to speak, and I still miss that one a lot. But
Me too, girl.
I'm
Me
getting there.
too.
And so it's just listening, and trying to like listen more than anything for like her heart. Like, where is her heart in all of this? And she told me to, I don't want to get to a place where I grow bitter towards the Lord,
Mm.
and like, but me, I'm like, but the Lord can do it. And so like,
Mhm.
it's just been such a hard, challenging place to understand, how do I love her in this and through
Mhm.
this, regardless of the outcome? How do I do that well?
Yeah.
You know?
That's amazing, Evelyn, just because like I commend you and I'm standing in prayer. So
Yeah.
I know that's hard to share because I know personally you're right in it right now. And we're
Yeah.
still believing for healing for your friend.
I know.
Um, but it's hard when it's something small,
Yeah.
right? It's hard even just like, friend, don't move over there, or don't buy the car, or
Mhm.
don't date him, or do
Mhm.
date him, give it a shot. And they're like, no, I don't want to. um, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Or, like whatever it is, like that we are there with friends. But when it comes to like what you're talking about, which I know is hard to talk about, but we're
Yeah.
talking about is like their entire human existence on this planet.
Mhm.
It's like it takes it to another level, right?
Yeah.
It takes it to like God, like I think having to go back into like some of our previous podcasts that are not on video, but they're on other ones, like learning that God's love extends beyond this physical realm.
So far.
But it's hard
Yeah.
because how do you say, let me bring you this? Let me tell you, we're fighting still. We're going to do this. And they've given up because I think they haven't given up, but they've made a different choice. And I
Mhm.
think that happens in friendships all the time.
Mhm.
Whether it's how they process just lifestyle changes, and
Right.
it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard.
I think, yeah, I don't remember which one of our pastors said it, but I remember a while back, he was saying unity is never challenged until you come to that place of disagreement. Like it's easy to have unity while everyone agrees and everyone's has that same perspective and approach. But unity like is truly met when we come to a place of disagreement and we can still stand together
Mm,
and walk together.
that's good.
Because I can stand next to you and be like, well, I don't like, let's agree to disagree, but like I'm no longer walking with you, you know?
And I think that's the difference, though, I think I'm not going to put it out there, but I know that I guess I am. When you and I talked about this and we prayed about it, like this is not just a casual friendship.
No.
Like this is your closest of friends,
Mhm.
and so there's intimacy there. There's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm a little crazy today. I need to talk through this. Get me back on track. That's that person for
Mhm.
you. And I think that a lot of times we call people friends because we party together. We call people friends because we go to the gym together. We
Yeah.
call people friends because I saw them at church. But those friends, like you're just saying, the unity's never challenged, the correction never comes in, like
Mhm.
it never goes deeper because there isn't a challenge, there isn't any intimacy that's being challenged, or
Mhm.
there's no exposure, there's no vulnerability. And it's like that's also comes back with our walk with Jesus, quite frankly. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, no, I don't get mad at God. I would never be mad at God. This is I'd imagine,
Yeah.
because I don't even talk to him that much. Right? Like if I don't even
Mm.
talk to him that much and I just kind of like go and take my communion and call it a day, I do my Hail Marys,
Mhm.
I go on Christmas and Easter, like I don't have these huge
Yeah.
feelings or conversations with the Lord because like we ain't that close.
Mhm.
But the more intimate we get with our friendship with the Lord, the more it gets complex and it's a challenge. And that falls for our friendships too. Like it was one thing for you to just throw plant a hug on Vero, but I know for a fact that even when I couldn't be there and I called her my fake little sister, like you leaned into friendship with her,
Mhm.
and when there are times like even in our relationship, like I suddenly felt safe to share things with you that I don't share with a lot of people, and I don't let a lot of people speak into my life.
Yeah.
But you create that space of intimacy that makes it welcomed. And
Mm.
so that's where it's challenging, because what you're talking about is these differences that can spark up this kind of like shaking,
Yeah.
but it's because the relationship's intimate, because we got deep.
Mhm.
Um,
That of like a previous podcast we talked about. I don't know if it was the last one. I don't remember, but we talked about, those hard things, and like if a random stranger comes in and says something or does something like that, you're like, wait, I don't know you, but it's the intimacy and the vulnerability that has been established, and I think even just hearing, like, I know, like Rachel said, we've been walking this with you, but also just hearing you, like you're sharing about how do you not just agree to disagree, but how do you respect,
Mm.
that decision on your friend? How do you respect the decision they've made and support them, even
Mhm.
if something that like you don't necessarily like maybe not agree with in a sense, like because
Yeah.
like you said, your tendency is like we're gonna fight till the end, and I know that about you. I've lived it with you, but um to be able to do that, and I think from what I've known about you and got to experience in our friendship is I think you've even been showing as you're sharing your answers to some of these questions is your sensitivity to God,
Mm.
your willingness to hear from the Lord, your willingness to come and humble yourself and say, okay, God, why is this upsetting me? Like even the
Mhm.
correction. It reminds me of kind of Karate Kid, where it's like the wax on, wax off, and it looks like it has nothing to do with anything that they want. But yet at the end of the day, the Lord's like, actually, this is how you apply it, right? Like
Mm.
the Mr. Miyagi's like, with all those moves you were doing on waxing on and waxing on and painting and all of that, like that's going to help you build the foundational um, moves to be able to fight in the ring, right? And so same thing here, like I think that posture to be vulnerable with the Lord, to be humble before God, all those things like build up the ability to love other people, whether it is a romantic or if it's a friendship. Like it
Yeah.
allows you to have that sensitivity to step back. And I think having the Lord is so necessary even to be a friend, because
Yeah.
even if like I may not agree with something you're doing or saying, but I can come to God and I can pray to him about it. And I remember when I was going through my separation and I would talk to you about my ex, and you would tell me to pray for him. I was like, I don't want to pray for him, because the more I pray for him, my heart can't be like hard against him. But that's really what it is. As we take these relationships with God, like he softens our heart and allows us,
Mm.
well, to be okay with a decision that someone we love has made that we wouldn't necessarily make for them, but we're like, okay, this is where we're at, and am I really a friend or not? And
Mhm.
just
That's
being
so
a friend,
good.
always going to be right with you. I'm always going to be in agreement with you, so that's why I'm always with you. Or am I still a friend when I don't agree? And that may be when you need me the most. And so
Mhm.
I think I value that a lot in my friendship with you, is that I know you don't just like speak to speak. I know you speak because you have insight, you have wisdom, but you have a relationship with God to the point that you would hold back what you want to say if that's not what God told you should say. And
That's
I
so
think
good.
that's really good. That's a great quality of a friend. I think so.
Yeah. I so
Thank
good.
you.
I want to close out because we are running out of time. And I want to ask you one final question
Okay.
and then we'll close out. But Evelyn, I mean, even just in honor of your friend, but in honor of just who you are, um,
Mhm.
what is a legacy of love that you hope to leave with the people you encounter, and even once you're gone from this earth?
Um, Definitely, when I think of even my friend that we're talking about, one of the first ways that the Lord showed me to trust and showed me what true friendship was through her being my friend first.
Mm.
before I could allow myself to be her friend. I told her once when I was a kid, I was like 12. I was like, I don't believe in best friends because people change, circumstances change. It doesn't work, And one time for my birthday, she gave me a card and she signed it, your best friend. And I was like, well, now I have to be your best friend back. But so we've laughed about that before, but yeah, I think like extending the love of God to people and loving them well. And my hope and desire for the legacy I leave behind is not that they'll remember me, is that they'll see Jesus in whatever way I could love them.
That's beautiful. Yeah, friend. Well, I know that you are now leaving that legacy already. And I think I know the title of our message. This episode will be Love is Loving First, the way the Lord did for us. And so thank you so much for being with us. You're amazing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so vulnerable. I know you're doing great work in the community in official capacities as a friend. Will you share a little bit about that and how we can learn more information and support?
For sure. So, like you said in the beginning, I am a facilitator for the International Friendship Council, which will soon be DBA, International Friendship Community. Yeah, and so it's a platform where people can sign up to be friends with local international students. It's a way to love them, make them feel welcome, but also like extend a place of friendship and hopefully lifelong relationship, welcoming them into our family, into our homes, into our lives. To show them, that we are here with them and for them, in a way that their families can't be right now. And so if you are interested or would like to hear about our fun events, we just had a celebration of cultures, and would love to learn more, our Instagram is IFC of OC.
IFC of OC.
Correct.
On Instagram. Okay, thank you so much, Evelyn. Appreciate you. And we appreciate you just being on our show.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
So I want to, before we close off officially, I want to share with you guys a couple announcements. We want to remind you that we have Elias Gift. And so that's, again, our partnership with the hospital, bringing these boxes for mothers who have experienced pregnancy loss. And we can always still use donors for that and even volunteers helping package. But another component of Elias Gift is our Not Alone support group. And so we will be starting that on February 23rd. It's going to be 7 p.m. online on Thursdays. And also, don't forget, We See You Kitchen goes out every Saturday. So make sure you're signing up to volunteer. We also, if you're not aware of yet, we have our campaign, where we are challenging 100 people who have a heart for South LA to commit to being a monthly donor of $70 a month. And that would help us fully fund We See You Kitchen for 2023. So we can then purchase a trailer that we have in sight. And so another announcement we have is we have a men's group starting up Saturday, February 18th at 3:30 p.m. at our office. So if you're a man or you know a man, make sure you let them know. And then also
get the men over here. I won't be leading it.
We have a new episode every Tuesday. Every Tuesday we're having new episodes. So make sure you're already subscribed, you share these episodes with your friends, families, all of those that you know. And just remember, until we arise, what won't change in our lives, in our family, in our community, and in our world.
Yes. All right, ladies, what an amazing episode. 1, 2, 3. Until we rise. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.